Thank you for the introduction, Arden. I'll introduce myself first. My name is Lauren Matthews. I'm one of the co-directors for Steps Forward alongside Arden. I started with the organization as an inclusion facilitator at SFU, and then I moved into a provincial coordination role, and then just recently into the co-directorship with Arden. This first session will be a panel of student service and experience leaders from 3 BC universities. As Arden said, sort of in yesterday's session, we did spend some time talking about the importance of an authentic student experience, and we kind of unpacked that in talking about in the context of inclusive post-secondary. We're thinking about students having access to the same kinds of opportunities to benefit and contribute to campus life in the same ways as any other university student, getting the most out of their experience. And so today's topics will kind of go over how student engagement beyond academics benefits the overall student experience of any student. What are some of maybe the trends and changes coming out of the pandemic? And how inclusive post-secondary initiatives and facilitators can engage with student experience leaders collaboratively, so that students we work for can too benefit from all of those same opportunities. We're planning to welcome questions and conversation throughout, but would ask you to sort of hold questions and comments until the end of each topic. So you could always sort of put a hand up in the using the emojis or write something in the chat, and we'll open that up sort of after each question topic. And so firstly, I'd like to welcome our panelists to introduce themselves, their university and role, and how they're familiar with inclusive post-secondary. We'll start with maybe you, Danny.
Sorry, I blocked my mute button. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lauren. My name is Danny Velgardson. I am of mixed settler ancestry and Echo Dene from Fort Nelson First Nation. I am currently coming to you today from the traditional unceded and untreated territory of the Syilx Okanagan peoples, and just very honored to be here as an uninvited guest on these territories, but recognizing that I have also lived within other unceded territories as an uninvited guest as well. So really just honoring that connection to land and the peoples who've been there since time immemorial. I am an Indigenous student advisor with Indigenous programs and services here at UBC Okanagan. I'm actually quite new to the role still. It's just been over a year, but I've had the lovely experience of working with a Steps Forward student who has self-identified at our campus. When students self-identify within the Steps Forward program, they are enrolled under what we call the Aboriginal Access Studies program, which is a non-degree program specific for Indigenous students. That falls under kind of my purview of advising. So I've had the pleasure of being able to work with one of our students this year, although I know our program and services have been in connection with Steps Forward students in the past as well. But I think one thing that my role is able to do is just provide a bit more of that cultural, social, and peer support on campus, especially with the Indigenous programs that are unique to our students. So being able to provide Indigenous peer mentors that are able to connect with the students throughout their year on campus, and invite them to, more informal events, but also keep in contact with the inclusion facilitators to make sure that they're aware of all the events that our department is putting on as well, especially when it comes to those special events that are in collaboration with community members like the Okanagan Nation Alliance, or Okanagan College will sometimes do something as well that we often partner with. So just being able to provide those experiences for the students is something that I try to include the inclusion facilitators and the Steps Forward students on.
Thank you, Danny. Muriel.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Muriel Adaka, and I'm currently the campaigns and mobilization coordinator of the Simon Fraser Student Society. I'd like to acknowledge that the SFSS is located on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Crazy, and the Semo nations. My engagement with Steps Forward came when I used to be a TA. I did my graduate studies at SFU, so I used to be a TA, and I had the honor of tutoring one of their students. Since then, I have moved into this role of being the campaigns and mobilization coordinator of SFSS, which represents the undergrad students of SFU. And currently my engagement with the organization is how to make campus experience more inclusive for all students, irrespective of whether they are full-time, part-time, distance learning, or they are even auditing students. So that's what I currently do.
Thank you, Muriel. And Chris.
Good morning. First off, I'd like to just say that I'm grateful today to be having the opportunity to come to you from the Lekwungen people's land, the traditional territory on which the University of Victoria stands, and the Songhees, the Esquimalt and Wasanich peoples whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. I've been had the honor to work at UVic for a number of years, and over the last 10 to 15 years, I have been involved with the student assistant program at UVic. And I should say that I'm the manager of resource sharing in UVic libraries. And so we've been able to offer students many employment opportunities throughout that time. And throughout the more recent years, probably the last, well, not really sure how many, but the last several years prior to COVID anyway, had the opportunity to work with several Steps Forward students at UVic and look to create meaningful opportunities for those students to engage fully and or to help further their experience in the university career. I'm looking forward to today's discussions, and I think that we're coming at a very interesting and important time post-COVID, if we can call things post-COVID. Let's be optimistic. Yeah, so it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I guess moving right into the first topic, I think maybe just wanting to, acknowledge we've got a really great range of really dedicated people who I think genuinely care a lot about providing or making sure that opportunities are inclusive on campus, and I think really get the value that brings to all students, including students accessing their studies through inclusive post-secondary. So thank you all for the work that you've put in and your commitment to that. So universities have been placing more and more value, I think, on developing and encouraging student engagement in ways that reflect their own unique campus culture, even unique culture of each kind of department or different part of the student experience. What are you working on currently in your role at university, and why is this something that's important to you?
I can start with that one. So I think, as I mentioned before, with our roles, we're really committed to providing both cultural and social experiences to our in all of our Indigenous students, but making sure it is inclusive. I think it's really important to have that moving forward, because it's really going to shape how, that first year is really going to shape how their next few years at the university are going to go. So one thing within my role, again, overseeing access studies, but also overseeing our Indigenous mentorship program, where we pair peer mentors with incoming students. And just with our Steps Forward student this year, I saw a lot of really great relationship building, not just between the mentors, but also the other students within the center. On campus, we have a space, an Indigenous center that our department is attached to. And just knowing that the Steps Forward student is always welcome there. They often come before class and stay after class, and they actually developed quite a good relationship with a lot of our student staff, a couple of our mentors, but also other students that were just in the center or our student hosts. So I think that relationship building experience has been so great to see, because it really gave the student a lot of excitement to come in, and they'd come in and, you know, the students would ask how their classes are going, and how they're doing on campus. So really creating an inclusive community within the center has been really beautiful to see, and also see that transition into that participating when we're doing small activities in the center in that, or even when a couple workers are working on projects, you know, students are really happy to get involved. So I think that that has just been really important to see, and I'm excited to see that carry forward into the next year with our continuing student staff, but also the students who will return to the center. I know it's a little quiet right now, but I think as the center kind of picks up, it's really those relationships that are going to help the student with the peer and cultural experiences that they'll continue to engage in.
Thank you.
So for us at the SFSS, one thing that has, I remember during my undergrad, I sat first year, I sat in a political science class, and one thing that the lecturer said was that don't just go through the university, allow the university to go through you. And at a time, I didn't really register what he was saying, but as I moved from first year to second year, third year, and now when I sit down and I reflect about my university experiences, I realized that when it comes to the university, there's more to it than just my academics. I learned how to be tolerant. I learned time management. I used to be in a boarding school, and we had a strict regiment on when things were supposed to be done. I went to the university and I have to manage my own time, get up early, go to class. I can choose to go or not to go. It's even my decision choices. So I think for me, shifting from the role of being a teaching assistant and currently holding this role as the campaigns and mobilization coordinator for the SFSS, I'm working on programs and activities that makes students come to value university outside academics. I'm not saying academics is not important, but I want students to see that when you come to the university, there's more to the university than just grades. So although we are trying to institute more programs to make learning, teaching and learning fun for students, I would also want students to learn how to be tolerant, how to speak up for themselves, how to engage with other students when you come, how to start a conversation. I used to be very shy, but thanks to graduate program, so when it comes to studying, I've had the opportunity of studying in different contexts. And in my home country, you just listen to the lecturer. There was nothing like group work. I always do my work alone. I came here and I'm supposed to participate in class. I'm supposed to talk because we had huge class sizes. We never did group discussions. When I came here, I had to tell people why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking. Those things kind of has helped to influence me in this role, in coming up with co-op opportunities for students, emotional support, especially when it comes to what the COVID pandemic has taught us, allowing students to become more engaged, finding a sense of community, not knowing, not only recognizing that the university is accessible to you, but you belong to this huge community, and this huge community also values you. So currently, that's what I'm doing in my role. I hope it's reflected in my work. I hope so. But that's what currently I am doing with the SFSS.
Thank you, Muriel.
Well, it's pretty hard to follow that, Muriel. Thanks. That was really lovely of you to share. I want to say that currently we don't, in the libraries, we don't have a STEP student working with us, but when I was asked to join the panel today, I kind of been reflecting back on my observations and experiences over the last few years pre-COVID. And I think that, you know, I've come to see how much the enhancing student engagement on campus really deepens their connection to the learning experience, and just the experience of being on campus and being part of the university. And I really liked your comment, Muriel, that when you said that somebody mentioned to you about letting the university flow through you too. And I think that, you know, it kind of speaks to the deepening relationships and bonds that can be formed, you know, and especially for, you know, the STEP students, if they're when they're working with their mentors and engaging in a work experience situation. Yeah, I've just seen that there's so much learning and deepening and development of trust and furthering understanding that comes out of that. You know, in my role at UVic, that's sort of what we have tried to champion, those situations. And sorry, I'm just losing my train of thought here, but we, yeah, so I just think that we, that inclusivity, and especially over the last several years, has been developing so much, the awareness and consciousness of the need to open up and become more inclusive and equitable in university experience. Yeah, and so I think that that's what we need to take forward, and that's the part of the university experience that we really want to bring to opportunities. So, thanks.
Thank you. That was also really so nice to hear, Muriel. I think we need that on. I almost want to like change the graphic. Let university flow through you is such a good reflective, and I think just yeah, that's such a great statement. I really appreciate that. Also just started in some of those comments touching a little bit on the pandemic and some of the impacts of that over the past few years. I guess before I move on, I did mention that there would be opportunities to mention, to share comments or have questions sort of between. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they wanted to add at this point? There's one in the chat that just says, from Jamie saying, I love that more than just grades. So I'll share that. I think, yeah, we all agree. So coming out of the pandemic, how has that changed how has the pandemic changed how universities are envisioning student engagement? I think we saw quite a shift in the pandemic to what that looked like on campus, and now sort of seeing a lot more kind of hybrid models and different modes of engagement on campus. Do you think your university is planning to return to what was typical 2 years ago pre-pandemic? Or do you think that a vision of campus community engagement has sort of changed, and a change that will maybe stay over the next few years as well?
Yeah, from the pandemic, we've seen such a decrease in overall student engagement. I think a lot of it comes from the Zoom burnout. And I think it just makes it a lot harder to feel like you're really rooted in the university experience. And, you know, I just want to throw back to Muriel. I really do love that comment of, you know, it's not just grades and letting the university flow through you. And, you know, the experience really enhances the education that the students go through. So I think it's been just such a hard past couple of years because of that, because there's less of those relationship points, less of those points to experience what would be a traditional university experience. And I think with UBCO, we're really seeing how all students have kind of taken that shift to spend less time on campus, even when we are in person. And it's a lot harder to get that overall student engagement. Communication's a lot more difficult. Students are really being bombarded with emails because if they're not in the center, we can't access them quickly enough to let them know of upcoming engagements or activities, or even when they are in person. Sometimes we just can't get students to get there because we need, you know, numbers and stuff. And then that creates a whole barrier of having students sign up, which we want to try to limit as much as possible. I think moving forward, we're definitely looking at kind of keeping a hybrid model for those students that the virtual participation does work for them, but I feel that is more in the informative aspects. So when we do events that have, you know, a lot of programming around time management, study strategies, having that opportunity to remain hybrid, I can see that moving forward, especially for students who remain in community and stuff. But in terms of that inclusivity piece, I really think it's important to keep that in-person connection. Because I think even just being in a room together where you're all looking at the same thing or sharing a meal, it really creates that sense of community on campus. So while I think we are planning to transition more back to in-person, I feel like there's still holdups for some programs, or we will remain hybrid for other programming. But the goal is really to go back to kind of the traditional in-person experience as we kind of wait for more news on that.
Thank you.
I personally also echo what Danny has said. We found out that during the pandemic, student engagement has been very low. I think largely it stems from people being Zoom fatigue. And even when we had to do most of our stuff online, I realized that you can be in the meeting and probably not be present. You can have, I was TAing during the pandemic, and you go online and you only see black screens. So you don't see anybody, you can't put a face to the name. Students don't talk, it's just about attendance. So for us, if you look at SFE's report in 2020, they will tell you that the school thrives on in-person teaching and learning. It was very difficult for us to navigate the online environment, especially not with teaching, but with getting students engaged, getting to know your classmates, getting to know who is in your tutorial group, even organizing group work. It was never done in all the courses I TA'd for. Students were doing the work on their own. So most of the things we've been focused on from fall last year till this time, I can see that the university has shifted to more in-person engagement with students. Usually when we have club days, it's 3 to 7 days. And afterwards, they pack everything from most gathering sites on campus, but now something like the table tennis table has been there since throughout the semester. The chairs on campus where students can sit on and convey and have a chat with each other. Most of those amenities have been left where they are throughout the semester. And even with that, students still don't feel comfortable coming on campus. So the university has tried to keep most of the courses in person. Some are online. Most students have a combination of two. They've also tried to get students more involved, especially students in the art courses. If you are in the science courses, I know that some of them were still coming to school with a limited number of people in the labs. But if you're in the art courses, you hardly had friends coming over and doing group work. So now there is group work, now there is presentation, now there are sometimes they have mandatory, some lecturers want you to be on campus to undertake certain activities, which has been very, very impactful for the student. I believe the university will shift more into in-person courses rather than hybrid, but I'm also thankful that the university has acknowledged that some people may not be in the position to be on campus. So giving them the option to study online, but most of the stuff the university is doing is to make sure the students feel a sense of connectedness to SFU. So encouraging them to be on campus. I've seen some programs that some of the student clubs have organized where they didn't have any Zoom link. So it's either you're on campus and becoming involved in the activity or you miss out. Sometimes it's not fair, but I believe at least, especially those who are in first year and second year who didn't have the university experience, to push them to come and have the sense of community first, because they didn't have the opportunity to experience all that. So that's what SFU is doing to increase participation, also giving support beyond the classrooms, making sure that students' emotional and mental health is taken care of, and also asking for feedback from students. We've had a lot of surveys, and I hope that the administration, I also hope that my student society take that into consideration before they make any policies or any changes to what they are doing now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Miro. Yeah, how to follow that in some ways. So I think that, can you hear me okay? Yeah. I think that there's been so much turmoil over the last couple of years, and initially I think with the response of universities to pivot to remote and online courses, obviously was necessary at the time, but I think there's been some useful things that have come out of that. I think some of the things that came out of that, which need to be addressed, are the inequities that were uncovered during that process. The fact that many students were able to respond well to that, but not all students had necessarily the technological resources they needed or the capability to be able to work in that more remote environment. And so I think that's one of the things that needs to be taken into consideration as we go forward. At UVic, the emphasis has been to return to on-campus classes in person, and we have been doing that since September last year. A little bit of a delay at the beginning of this year, but what we've seen is a pretty big return to campus, and lots of activities by the student services department of UVic to encourage participation. So, like physical activities on campus for new students. I think maybe last September was not quite as in previous years, the initial week of welcome kind of thing is lots of physical stuff going on, and there certainly was some of that, but I think it was still fairly guarded. We were, with COVID, we were not in ideal circumstances at that time, but nonetheless, the in-person activities were encouraged, and I think that has carried throughout the year with opportunities for social engagement being encouraged where safe, of course. But I think that what's been illustrated through the response during the COVID time is that the value of the on-campus experience has really been emphasized, and it is valued now more than ever, I think. And I think that, going forward, that's going to be the focus for UVic, is to maintain that in-person classes. And, I think that hybrid elements, if they are going to be there, they will be in addition to the face-to-face, which I think, just coming back to the opportunities for STEP students and inclusive education opportunities, I think that it's a good thing, right? Because it will open that up once again. And yeah, thanks.
So I see there's a few comments in the chat over that one. Did anybody want to speak to the comments that they've posted, or maybe I'll give an opportunity for Brittany? Did you want to share your comments, or would you rather I read them? I'll just read them. So Brittany said that I definitely noticed a difference. COVID shutdowns and severe budget cuts, I think, are having a huge impact on campus life. And then also shared for younger students, I think this is one that many, that a lot of us can probably relate with, for younger students who may have gone through mostly online and secluded high school experiences without a lot of peer interaction, that this is, it's a big struggle to then go into online classes in university. And I think that brings up a question that I would maybe pose to you all. What would your recommendations maybe be for students who have had their first 2 years of university be during the pandemic? Are universities thinking about that and how to encourage that particular demographic of students to get engaged as things reopen?
Sorry, is my mic working now?
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I've noticed this not just with the students that we support, but with peers as well, that they don't seem to have developed the social skills over COVID that they would typically do over the school year, going through high school with their classmates and talking to them. A lot of them have gone through high school with their cameras off and their mics muted, and they haven't really had a lot of engagement with their peers. And so I'm noticing that there's a lot of hesitance in the student body in general to engage with peers because they haven't developed those social skills. And taking the time to sit down with students and actually work on reciprocity in conversations. And when someone asks you a question, asking a question in return and actually going back to a basics of how to communicate with people properly has been quite helpful for the students that I support.
Yeah.
I think maybe I'll just jump on that thought too, because I know we've definitely been thinking about it in our department for all students as well. Last year we had this incoming group of students that are second years or third years who have transferred, and they've never been on campus. They've never met anyone that they've been to school with. So one thing I did was part of the peer mentor program is I did still peer those students with peer mentors. Even though they weren't new to UBC technically, they were still new to campus and still new to kind of the atmosphere. So we wanted to really encourage those in-person opportunities. One thing that I encourage our mentors to do is to offer coffee to students. So we have a Starbucks on campus, and I just purchase a gift card and they'll take their students out for coffee. And it sounds a bit like an incentive, and it kind of is, but sometimes that's the best way to make those initial connections. And I know at the beginning of the year, that was really important to a lot of students coming in. And, you know, I think that it is a really hard one to figure out how to build those communication skills and the confidence to interact with their peers and faculty, because, you know, approaching your instructors is also scary to begin with, but not having that first couple of years of approaching them in person is a new kind of trial. So just trying to provide as much support as we can within our department. And I know our student staff is really up to kind of providing as much support as they can too, with even just walking them around campus. But I think, you know, this past year, I've just been really open to letting our students use some of the spaces and just sitting with them in a Zoom call and practicing just turning on the mic and the video camera, so that, you know, some students just kind of get used to being visible and present in a conversation, because I think that has been really hard. And that's going to continue to be a hard thing for all students moving forward. I think they've kind of gotten very comfortable with the idea of a more passive education, where they can watch recorded Zoom lectures, but moving back into that in-person lecture is going to be a lot harder for all students, because it's going to create a lot of different anxieties, whether just being in person and around a lot of people again, or also, you know, keeping on top of readings and projects and making it to class on time. So I think that's something to really consider when we're planning our early programming for the fall, to provide those spaces to kind of increase student confidence with just approaching, you know, university as a fresh student again, whether they did a mixture of hybrid courses or were pretty virtual this past year. I think it would be important to continue those opportunities to work together on building those confidences.
Okay, so for us as ESFU, we have tried to, I'll say for the SFSS, not SFU, SFSS, when it comes to clubs, I think we did increase the budget we give to various clubs to organize programming for students, to encourage them to be on campus, be more engaged with their fellow students. I find Danny's point on mentorship fascinating. We haven't done that from the society. I know that with the university has peer mentor programs going on, but I think that's something that we could consider going forward with the new crop of executives. I would also say that when it comes to getting more students with in-person, we have tried to rely, I rush to say this, but I will say we've relied very much on the Teachers Supporters Union, TSSU. We have a very close relationship with grad students, teaching assistants, research assistants, and we've tried to come up with various programs. Usually when the semester begins, we have a week-long training for TAs in the school. So we've tried to give them the tools that they need to get students more involved, trying to help them with how they navigate students with moving from online teaching and learning to in-person teaching and learning. And that has helped tremendously, especially from the part of the teaching assistants, since they deal with smaller class sizes in comparison to big lecture halls that the lecturers have to oversee. I think that's what we have presently been doing when it comes to getting students more engaged. I've also seen that I said when it comes to the facilities to get people together, it has been there since the semester began. I think one thing that the university has taken into consideration is being consistent. You don't just organize programs and then afterwards release students to do what they want to do. Students will probably go back into their shells. So make sure that those programs or those activities have been consistent throughout the semester. And even now that the semester is over, there are various programs that are still ongoing to get students more engaged so that we can build a level of trust and comfort and belonging in the school, so that when we are transitioning back to total in-person learning, or if they choose to have all their classes in person, they will feel comfortable doing so.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, there's a reflection in the comments I just wanted to share too, from Tiffany. It was actually one of our facilitators at UBCO. And she's just reflecting that for students who are just finishing their third year this semester, this was their first last day events at UBCO. And so that was just something that she was reflecting on, that being such a strange experience, that in the student's third year, that's actually their first annual event in person at school. So with all of that said, and I think we've kind of alluded to some of this throughout in different topics, but the next topic is thinking about how are you or your university creating opportunities that foster a sense of welcome and belonging for all students. And how can we as inclusion facilitators or inclusive post-secondary initiatives collaborate with you in ways that support access and engagement for the students that we work for?
So I've been really lucky in having the inclusion facilitators like Tiffany and Vanessa on our campus be really proactive and reach out and just being open to that open communication for our department, so that we can make sure that they're also aware of any programming happening on campus, more specifically within our department, but also across campus when we can. So I think that that's been really helpful in just making sure that, you know, students are making it to the events when they can, or even just, you know, lately it's even just like checking in and seeing if they've been in the center or not. Because I know, again, it's been quiet, but, you know, they're always welcome there. And we've still had a couple of students dropping by, just kind of wrapping up the end of their term. But I think too, as you know, one thing we have talked about too is kind of the chance to volunteer or work on campus, even within our program. I know in the past, Step Forward students have been really engaged with some of the events and programming in our department. And I think that's something I would really love to see moving forward, especially as we go into orientation. You know, there'll be more in-person events and stuff. And I know students are really eager to see a lot of familiar faces within our student staff and be a part of that. And then, you know, just continuing that open communication. I know too, a lot of times I will get some communications around funding for specifically Indigenous students with disabilities or diverse needs. So I think being able to just create that open space of just providing support wherever I can, or our department can, our whole team has been super welcoming, and we just kind of leave the door open and hope that, you know, if the student has any questions or just wants to talk, they're always welcome to come into the office area. But also we like to usually do kind of a round in the center and just kind of check in with the students. So I think, you know, continuing that partnership and just, you know, keeping in touch with our inclusion facilitators, I think will be key in moving forwards. Well, I don't know a lot of what's coming up yet. I think as we kind of move towards orientation, we'll be able to share a lot more of the programming coming up.
Thank you.
So for my role, I have tried to get the student society form a relationship with people from Steps Forward. I will acknowledge that because I work with student leadership, and every year, I know that every year the crop of leaders will change. I'm trying to create a relationship between the organization and the society in such a way that when there is no, when Muriel is not around, that relationship can still last. And that's what I've been trying to think about, how to make sure that these established relationships, they go beyond the individual that tried to initiate or sustain that relationship. I'm also working closely with some of the facilitators to see whether we can get co-op opportunities for the students. It's been a rocky road, I will admit. Sometimes when it's very difficult to tell people to see things from a different perspective. I'll admit, this is my first time in the corporate world. I didn't know there's so much bureaucracy and red tape in there, but it's been very, very challenging. And it's something that I am also trying to navigate in getting, making sure that students also get the opportunity to do co-op meaningful work that can help them beyond the university when they are done. We are also trying to make sure that the university is more accessible. So finding out where the accessible washrooms on campus, whether the university is fulfilling its duty to care. There are conversations going on around that. What I would like to see facilitators, I think facilitators are doing a very fantastic job. If I would talk from my perspective of being a TA, I will probably say have students, if the facilitators could talk to the tutorial group that a student will be involved in, will be a part of, I think that would be very, very good. I think the facilitators do a fantastic job talking to the lecturers and also talking to the TAs. But sometimes the people in the class, they don't really know how to navigate that relationship of having their colleague in class. So talking to them on how to engage the student, I think that would be important. Maybe have the conversation when the student is not around, or if the student is comfortable, fine. But trying to teach other students on how to navigate that relationship will be very fantastic too.
Thanks, Muriel.
So just really to add to that, I just want to at the university level, I think the looking for opportunities to increase activities and engagement from students and be more mindful of equity and diversity is something that's been developing over many years. But I think that what I see these days is that those elements are now front of mind in what the university is looking for in terms of engagement from and creating opportunities for students. Coming from the library's perspective and as an employer, and I think that what I've seen in the last couple of years is a huge change. I mean, libraries, and you'll all know this from your own research and academic careers, but the access to information and what you need to have access to in terms of your education has been changing for many, many years. But over the last couple of years, things have accelerated incredibly. And that's changed the way a lot of things are working in libraries. And, you know, where we had opportunities for engaging with Steps Forward students previously, a lot of those opportunities, like we haven't been able to create that right now. But what I'm thinking now is that what we need to do is take a different approach to that and start looking more actively for those opportunities and seeing what's the situation in libraries now and where can we look for those opportunities to create meaningful employment opportunities for Steps Forward students, as well as student assistant positions in general. So that we can engage and kind of get back to that. Yeah, so thanks.
Yeah, thank you all for being here and sharing all of that. I think that was the last bigger topic, and so we've got good. It seems like that was good timing to open it up. Maybe I'll stop sharing my screen so that we can all see each other again. Thanks. And sort of open it up to discussion. If anybody has any thoughts they want to share or questions that they want to ask, you could just call out or raise a hand or type in the chat. Well, thank you all for being here and for all of your input. I think that was really great. I think I got lots of ideas of different things to think about and reach out, different people to reach out to. Muriel, I want to maybe have a conversation about if we can be involved in TATM Day again, because that kind of came to mind as that would be a really good point to connect with TAs more. And yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, so I've got lots of good ideas. I hope that you guys have come out of it with some ideas and some inspiration, and I hope the same for everybody kind of listening in today. If anybody does have any questions or comments,